What's up, family? James here with another episode of Organic Wisdom. And today we have a repeat guest, our good friend Will Derrode. Will, how's it going?
Pretty good to be with you, man. Excited to talk about everything we're going to dive into today.
Yeah, if you didn't join us last time, Will is an exceptionally tapped in clairvoyant. Really, he just has a deeper sense for, how would you say it, the hidden reality.
Yeah, like whatever's just going on in the spirit behind the superficial material. I've been blessed to have a gift of different flashes or moments where that kind of bleeds through into my perception. Then I just try to share that so it helps people so they don't get trapped in dark stuff like a lot of us do.
Yeah. And, everything he talks about, it rings true for me and it aligns with my own personal experiences. And that's why we've built a friendship and I really enjoy his work. And we wanted to have him back today to talk about the relationship between drugs and substances and entities, demons, angels, all different types of entities. But through my own personal experience in life, I've come to realize that certain substances connect you with certain energies in the spiritual world. And Will has done a ton of work specifically about this. So, Will, as an introductory to this topic, can you tell us a bit about how you came to the realization that drugs or substances impact consciousness and can potentially connect us with beings?
Yeah, so I kind of knew this back in the day when I had drug addictions, but now after the fact, when I look back at those times, I look back at those people, it's a lot more clear to me what was going on. And when I see things with flashes of the spirit now, it makes a lot more sense. Basically, the way that I put this all together is that the human nervous system, the vibration that we hold, is like it's like a tuning fork. And God made us with a perfect design so that our tuning fork, when we are aligned to who we're meant to be, can really tune us into the heavenly vibrations that are available. But when we distort that tuning fork, it tunes us into a different radio channel. And depending on the whatever's introduced into our system, it can tune us into different realms, different beings. And in my case, back when I had drug addictions a long time ago, not that I want to get into this because this was over 10 years ago, um, too much, but I definitely had a lot of darkness around me, like a dark cloud. And I couldn't really pinpoint it, but now in hindsight, I understand there was like a swarm of these darker entities that were just trying to piggyback and take me all the way down. And really, that's what would have happened. I almost died from overdoses a couple times. That's where the outcome would have been, is like all the way deep down to no longer being here. So, in time, after being a clairvoyant for a long period of time, I started to understand that our nervous system, our frequency, our energy is what connects us with different realms in the spirit. And based on how these entities affect us, it's related to our nervous system's vibration. And when you introduce these substances, it's like throwing a whole new ingredient into the mix. And then that can end up with us in very different places energetically.
Interesting, right? So, do you think it's the goal? Well, there's a variety of different entities, and we could get into it, but for the more nefarious types, the goal is to feed on negative emotions and to essentially kill or make the individual very sick mentally, physically. Is
Yeah,
that
so
what you've gathered?
there's a variety of different, like I have my own categorization system. Most of the, it depends on the substance, but most of the beings are going to want to lay low. So they actually would prefer that you continue the addiction and that you stay kind of in a numb perpetual loop and that you don't die because then they can continue to feed. So you could think of it as the same relationship people or animals have to parasites. It's like they want you to stay alive so they can continue to get energy off of you. In
Right.
the extreme case, what I call like Goliath demons, Goliath astral parasites, they're willing to take somebody all the way down. And you might see that with like fentanyl, heroin, things like that, where it's like you can tell they're on the track to maybe no longer be here with us. So it really depends. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good distinction because I believe there are demons straight from hell. You know, you call them
Yeah.
Goliath demons, but their goal is to drag people to a hellish afterlife, because that glorifies their kingdom. They get a ton of glory for doing that, whereas other entities are simply almost fishermen. They're trying to get their food, and they feed off certain energies, just like a parasite or a tick might. So for those entities, it's in their interest for you to be alive and just continue with that habit.
Yeah, and we see that a lot for sure with things outside of drugs. Like could be very, very simple, like just doom scrolling addiction, which is really common. Like we a lot of us are kind of undoing that now in this age. But like oh, it's 111 right now for me. So this is an
Yeah,
important
look at
topic
that.
for sure.
Hmm.
But the small addictions, those are the ones that I see these astral beings in the mid to low level that they try to keep somebody in that loop and almost, I'm going to say, dismiss the habit. Like, oh, it's not a big deal. For example, maybe porn or masturbation, like things that are like, it just depletes you enough. It's not like you're having a hangover from binge drinking, but it's just enough that you can kind of justify it. And
Yeah.
then they can kind of keep the cycle alive.
Hmm. And they'll actually, let me know if you agree with this, but I think they'll use people around you if they have some input into people in certain environments. They'll use those to either get the substance close to you or near you, or maybe like, here's an example. I used to have a ketamine issue, and I want to talk a bit about ketamine today because my personal, I have a lot of experience with that drug, and I've experienced a lot of light and a ton of darkness on it. But anyways, when I finally quit, I said, God, I am done. I'm done doing this crap. Like, I'm moving on with my life. And a few days later, I went out to a club with my friends, and I had been doing ketamine for years, and an attractive female had never offered me ketamine once in my life. But as soon as I told God I was done with it, I swear to you, an attractive woman locked eyes with me from across the club, walked straight up to me, and said, "Hey, this is so random, but do you want to come and do some ketamine with me?" And my jaw almost hit the floor, and I'm like, "What is going on?" So I don't know what was happening there, if it was a test from God or some entity trying to get me back on the bandwagon. What's your opinion of that?
I mean, that's a beautiful testament to that. The kingdom of light and the kingdom of darkness both have their own coordinated efforts and agendas. And
Mm,
they understand us and where we're at because they see us in the spirit. They understand, where the exact moment to strike would be. Or in the example of the kingdom of light, where a little nudge could change your whole life if you listen. Like,
right.
and their efforts definitely do show up in those moments. And yeah, a lot of those entities do piggyback around certain groups of people. So depending on the energy of the place you're at, they can, they can do their thing and try to interject. But thank God it sounds like you you saw it, or I don't know, did you get sucked into it?
I didn't. It was too on the nose. I was like, this is weird. This
Yes.
doesn't happen. This, yeah, it was strange, but I just I remember doing when I also other drugs like cocaine, it just always seemed to turn up. Like, it just somehow you'd
Yep.
find a way to get it. And it's like the devil's symphony, like just pulling these levers to make things happen. So why don't we start with the most common drug of all and probably the deadliest, which is alcohol. What are your thoughts about alcohol?
hmm Man, so I haven't drank in 10 years. And thank God, I just kind of got an intuition about 10 years ago. I woke up one morning and I said, I'm done. I just kind of knew. And a lot of people say that, but it was actually over for me. And what I have seen with alcohol is that it varies drastically. For a lot of people, it can kind of be in that mid to even upper astral area in terms of the types of entities that come, meaning that it can kind of be a little benign for, I would say, the average person. But for those people who are prone, it will go straight to the low astral or sometimes even to darker stuff. When people black out, when people get like completely unconscious and people get into a rage or into a fight, there definitely seems to be a lot of entity activity. It seems overall to be like whenever people drink, you are increasing the likelihood of your own shadow unconscious aspects to come forward and to not be able to be conscious or mindful or process it. And also for these mostly astral beings to come through and piggyback through somebody's experience and express their lower ego aspects. The thing that I don't really hear many people talk about is what I call ancestral phantoms, which is
Mm,
that these it's a hard thing to describe, but basically the way I look at these is that there's almost like fragments from our ancestors, fragments from our past that want to stay alive. And drinking, in my view, seems to bring people closer to be able to let those fragments live through them. For example, it could be like beating your wife. That could be like one of those fragments from the ancestry, maybe from your grandparents or from way farther back, that could want to live through somebody. And when they go into that unconscious place through alcohol, it can start to manifest. So there's that. Then there's the escapism, and in the extreme cases, people who will like literally drink themselves to death, which to me is a much more significant to those Goliath astral beings, like the big demons, the head honcho ones, whatever you want to call it. That they're just taking somebody all the way down.
mhm. So fascinating. When I used to drink, it's been many years for me as well, but I just eventually started noticing how it gave me a proclivity for every single type of sin, whether it be gluttony. I would pig out at 3 in the morning, like pig out, disgusting. Sloth. The next day, I would just sleep all day, watch Netflix. Lust, obviously, is a huge one with alcohol. Pride, you could get very arrogant. It was just feeding all the different sins for me. So I'm curious. Yeah, it could be an ancestral thing, or it could be, it's, for me, it just seems to be extremely detrimental. But as you said, it's not that way for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, some people are blessed, if you want to call it that, maybe lucky, or they're just in the right situation, or they have the right sort of orientation. They seem to be able to drink and just be very friendly for, a few drinks and they know they can stop. But I think there are also those of us who are called into a higher purpose. Let's say you have any kind of spiritual gift, you have any kind of spiritual, like even just sensitivity to energy or heightened intuition. This is going to be more of a kryptonite for you. Like,
Mm,
I feel that for those, I don't want to say like chosen, but let's say like set apart for service, those people who are here to do things to help bring more light onto the planet, when you start to interfere, especially with things like alcohol, it's going to disturb it. And what might not be such a big deal for somebody, for you, it's going to feel like a huge deal. Like for me, drinking is just so like off the table.
yeah.
At least right now, I can't see myself like I'm not called to it in any way, shape, or form. And I think it's important because the work that I do involves seeing spirit and like channeling messages of light for people, and it's just not compatible with where my soul is at and where I'm going.
Would you say that alcohol diminishes spiritual abilities, or lowers one's frequency and vibration?
Yeah, basically overall, I would say it definitely muddies the lens. Um, I don't know. I always try to be charitable to people who are like, oh, I just drink a glass of wine. I'm still intuitive, and I try to be charitable to those types of people because I occasionally meet them. But in my experience, it just feels, and the same would be with ketamine, to be honest. It just feels like kind of off the mark, which is what a
Yeah.
sin is. It's just like it's not going to
Yeah.
help in any way, shape, or form. And I'm too aware. And I think that that's what happens for a lot of us souls who are very intuitive, very guided. We're just too aware of, like, the next day, the hangover, the desire for food in excess, like all of it is just too aware of where it's
Yeah.
leading and how it's not supporting your path.
Right. And a lot of these substances, alcohol is one, ketamine's one, it's giving you a glimpse of something good. Like that freedom one feels, the social freedom. I've had bouts of real inspiration and like listening to music and feeling truly inspired on alcohol, which is a good thing. But that's pointing to a higher way, a higher virtue that's not intrinsically tied to that substance. And I think people really chase the dragon through that substance instead of attempting to build their aura, right? Raise their vibration, and then the fruits of that come with an increased appreciation of music, increased socialization, increased purpose, all of these things. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. It definitely shows like every drug, it's like I look at it as like a train. It's going to bring you to a certain destination. But then sometimes they bring you somewhere else after. So it's like, it might bring you to the amusement park, but then it drops you off at the dump.
It takes you to the yeah, it takes you to the dump.
So,
Cool. Well, any last thoughts about alcohol before we move on?
I mean, I would say intuitively, if you're a sensitive soul, you're probably going to feel this is not going to be the your cup of tea. This
Hmm.
world is primarily pushing alcohol as the escape. It's falling out of favor now, but most souls who I speak with who are highly intuitive, they don't resonate with what the masses do. And alcohol is one of the symbols of what the masses do, just in
Yeah,
general here in the West. So, yeah, I would recommend just listening to that. You know, the same way that
yeah.
you don't watch the news, maybe you don't drink.
There's a reason why liquor stores and bars stayed open during COVID when everything else was closed, because they wanted people's consciousness low. They wanted people plugged into the matrix mind. And there's a long history across spiritual traditions of the pitfalls of alcohol and how it could potentially connect you with detrimental beings. So everyone definitely keep that in mind, pray about it, meditate. But you said a cup of tea, so I was thinking, why don't we touch a little bit on caffeine? What is caffeine's spiritual effects?
It's interesting. It seems to have, like, I'm just going to speak from my experience, as always, with this whole chat. It seems to have an effect that can be used in the favor of taking aligned action, right? Like it can give you a boost to do what your soul needs to do. It can invigorate you to act on what your mission is as a spirit, as a soul on this planet. But the downside is it can be something that makes the mind and the mentality and the personality more rigid. So like some aspects of ego, it can make people more entrenched into that. That's personally been
Mm,
my experience, is like it can kind of lock people into the mind, doing, ego, and then that can put a sort of spiritual ceiling on some of the capacities that we have and some of the light we're here to share, and the really the ability to feel intuition and like those higher forms of subtlety and thought. So it's a double-edged sword. I mean, I have literally right here, this is Costa Rican coffee. This is the first bag of coffee I've ever bought in my life. So it was
wow.
just a pure experiment for me. You know what I mean? I didn't drink any coffee or anything for like 10 years. And
Wow.
I've experimented and I've seen both sides of what I've talked about. Like it's invigorated me to take action, be more talkative. Like I'm getting like super chatty. It's crazy. But it's also disturbed my sleep, which then can cause a weird cycle as well.
Yeah.
And then what I was mentioning about ossifying the ego, I think that that's probably one of the biggest downsides is it can entrench somebody into their patterns, into their mind, or into the sense of themselves through the idea of doing only. Like I am what I do, rather than I am who I am, and I am as I am.
Right. Yeah, and I think that could potentially be a reason why it's also, like alcohol, the most commonplace drug in the world in this matrix system, with all the worker bees and people plugged into the corporate system, 9 to 5 jobs, all these people in third world countries who are unfortunately working very difficult conditions. But coffee always seems to be a central piece of productivity for the system, right? And I think it can dull the creative spirit a tad in favor of productivity. it could also unleash creativity, but there's a deeper spiritual creativity I'm speaking of that it can dull. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I can still like channel if, or I can still receive messages in spirit if I drink coffee, but it it can create, I really do feel it as almost like this pressure. Whereas
Mm.
in a sober natural state, that pressure is just open and relieved, and things feels a lot lighter in terms of how I'm able to receive in spirit. Which leads to kind of another one, which I would say is a much higher quality alternative, which is cacao, which
Mm.
seems to be actually quite similar, but in a way, just due to its ancient history, its traditions, and the energy behind cacao, it seems to me to have a lot more of a grounded, solid, heart opened effect that doesn't really affect that kind of pressure of the mind to be more rigid as much as caffeine. So that's definitely one thing I recommend people explore with. If you're like 100%, on the caffeine train, to explore what cacao can be as an alternative. Because to me, all of these things have a certain tendency to bring the human spirit in a certain direction. Doesn't mean it's going to do it every time, but
Mm.
I've seen the tendency of cacao to be a little bit more bent in the spiritual direction, which is evident in like cacao circles, ceremonies, and all of these things that are a part of many communities and spaces.
Yeah, when we met, you gave me some cacao, and I was
Oh
super
yeah.
appreciative of that. But I was skeptical for a while until some recent experiences where I was listening to music with some friends and ate some cacao, and I was like, I felt like I was rolling on the cleanest MDMA on earth. My heart just felt so open, and I felt so grateful to be there with people I loved, and the music sounded so good. But without the negatives of that kind of MDMA experience, also, cacao is an incredible medicine, and really, I think, undervalued in the Western world or underutilized.
Yeah, I mean, just like caffeine, like coffee, it has caffeine, so it can in excess bring people kind of to a similar place of coffee, but for whatever reason, it seems to be more centralized on the heart versus caffeine is a little bit more in the mental domain,
Hmm.
and you can kind of tell the difference if you drink a big coffee one day, wait a few days, don't have anything, and then have a big cup of cacao, you'll be able to feel they both have this energy to them, but the cacao sort of centers people more in the heart in a social way, and there's a reason why it was used as an ancient tradition medicine, and that's kind of one of the things I think might be cool to talk about in this convo too, is like plant medicines, the benefits, the drawbacks, like what can kind of go on in that realm, because that exists too. There's not just the dark side of these things. I
Oh
believe
yeah.
God's given us these tools, right, to be able to use to help to remember who we are, wake ourselves up, access certain abilities, but they got to be used wisely too.
Totally. This is a great segue. I would love to talk about. Let's go through some of the major plant medicines that people do in ceremony. And I would also love to discuss how a person can set themselves up for success going into a ceremony, and the common pitfalls, how people set themselves up for failure. So maybe let's start with ayahuasca. What do you think?
Oh man, I've never done ayahuasca, but I've been around the spaces of ayahuasca people for a long time,
Yeah,
and
same.
it's been really interesting to see. I mean, just broadly speaking about psychedelics in general, to go back to that train station analogy, to me, taking a psychedelic is like going to an interdimensional train station. You are, especially a large dose or a high potency psychedelic, you are like arriving at this train station and it's all in alien languages and you don't know which train's going where, and you hop on one of those trains and you can end up in a very weird place, a bizarre place, a dark place, a traumatizing place, or you can end up in an incredibly healing, renewing, and revitalizing place, like a heavenly place, in terms of
Mhm.
the energy you occupy and the types of beings that can come by. So, with that being said, you want to make sure your ticket is good. You got a ticket that the conductor will be able to be like, hey, it looks like you got this intention. Let's hop you on this train here. Um, and with that being said, there's no guarantee. Like, you might have the strongest intention and get shuffled onto the wrong train.
Mhm.
So in that way, psychedelics are a little bit of I don't want to say gamble, but it's like you have to know you don't really have full control. That's part of the journey. But on the other hand, and we'll get into ayahuasca in a second because it's kind of a perfect example of that, is it has this capacity to bring people into such powerful renewing of the mind, almost like a spiritual rebirth, truly. Like with ayahuasca, with mushrooms, and any of the potent psychedelics, it seems to be able to bring people to like a rebirth and to tune into the heavenly realms. We're almost like washed over with these healing waters that like renew our energy fields. But on the other side, and I've seen this and I've experienced this too, um, people can be opening themselves up to these incredibly profound places of delusion,
Mm.
psychosis. It can be a factor in people's psychosis, as I've seen with some friends of mine, whether it's mania or depersonalization, derealization, or just being ungrounded, it can usher that in as well. And even in the mid range, like people who do psychedelics don't integrate it and then just go back to their old habits even harder, that and go even deeper because they didn't have the right process or integration to be able to take that therapeutic benefit. But yeah, so to go to ayahuasca now with that kind of a background, ayahuasca seems to be like the jackpot of everything I just said, like the whole gamut. I've met people who I've had to coach and support after ayahuasca because they had panic attacks months later and flashbacks and craziness. And then I've met people who like just their presence walking into the room, I'm like, what have you been doing? Because you're
Yeah.
glowing. And they're like, I just
Wow.
got back from ayahuasca. And I'm like, your energy is like, I'm feeling it secondhand.
Wow.
So I've seen either side.
Oh, it's amazing. What do you think set? Do you think it's was the intention, or do you think the people who had a really positive experience were potentially took the dieta seriously, or they were sexually chaste before? There's all these different things that can impact the ceremony. I know for myself quickly, um, when I did Bufo, which is 5-MeO DMT. So it's a DMT medicine like ayahuasca, the strongest psychedelic. And I took the time leading up to it very seriously and was chaste and was serious about the dieta and kind of repentant of a series of sins in my life, and I put those behind me and really audited myself. I just tried to do things right leading up to it, and I had the most positive experience during the ceremony. And some of the other people there had extremely negative experiences, like seemingly hellacious experiences. So, do you think for not just ayahuasca but all plant medicine ceremonies that these factors are impactful?
I mean, the words that I'm just getting into my mind right now are like sacred intention, like holding these things with reverence. Like literally, I mean, I think it would be so helpful if you literally imagine it, this substance, whatever it is, this plant medicine, is like a gift from God to be able to help you on your path. And when you
Mm,
see and hold it that way, of like, it's imagine it's like literally fall down into the heavens into your hand, then the way that you set your sacred relationship and intention with it can definitely help imprint and program the experience. And then what you said as well, which is unique about ayahuasca, I think, is the dieta, this like pre-preparation. I think that's probably one of the big factors as well, for a lot of people. And I think it's easy to have a superficial intention, and that can get people kind of muddied up. He's like, you really have to do a little bit of soul searching. And this is my kind of take on psychedelics, is it's not something to replace your inner work. It's something to almost supplement. Like it's like a little, like you're already eating a good diet. Like you have a supplement company, right? So it's like
mhm.
you already eat a good diet, and then you take a supplement to just kind of support what you're already doing, not to be like, oh shit, I just ate horribly, and now I'm just going to take the supplement and it's going to like fix it.
Right, right. Yeah, I love that. It's so good.
Yeah, it's
So,
crucial.
mhm. So, regarding beings in ayahuasca, have you? I mean, you haven't done it, so it's a bit harder for you to say. But do you think people are connecting with certain types of entities?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to go off on a limb here. I'm going to make a lot of comparisons to mushrooms just because they both do work through a similar pathway, psychedelically wise. Although there's like the MAOI with ayahuasca, and I believe mushrooms is 4-phosphoryloxy N,N-dimethyltryptamine. That's like psilocin. It's like it literally has DMT in it as well. It's just
Oh, wow.
4-phosphoryloxy. It's like, the chemical is very, very similar. So just comparing with mushrooms and everything, 100%, spirit guides will often work with those who are beginning to move in that direction, especially with the sacred intention, angelic, goddess like beings. And people will even tell you, you know what I mean? I don't know if you've seen it yourself, but they'll be like, yeah, this like feminine guide like came towards me and was like washing me with light and taking me on this journey. Or even, ayahuasca itself, the spirit of the plant, which I haven't seen that. I've never seen ayahuasca in person, like a jar of it or a bottle of it. But that being said, there is like the essence of the plant, and then the guides, which can come if the container is right. I think sometimes the shaman or the practitioner
Oh,
can
this is a
help.
huge element.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah, they can help create that portal almost for these beings to be like, hey, we're going to use this to heal, not just for random, exploration.
yeah, and there, guys, there's some dark shamans out there. You really have to do your due diligence because there's absolutely some predators, not just physically. These are spiritual predators who have been co-opted by dark forces, and they use these ceremonies and circles as an opportunity to sink their fangs into people. Do you have any? Have you heard about this?
Totally. Yeah. I've had clients and friends, and I think it's like growing now because I've made some videos. I don't know if you've seen them about the narcissistic collapse. Like a
Hmm.
lot of the dark patterns of personality and consciousness are coming to light. And so this conversation is a lot more pertinent right now because these communities were infiltrated a long time ago. And now it's kind of coming to light of like, wait, that was actually super traumatizing and everything they did was super unethical. And it's just starting to get more exposed, I think, in general.
Praise God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a really interesting. I saw this documentary. It might have been a Vice thing where it was this guy who administers Bufo, and maybe your audience or you might even know what I'm talking about. And he talks about like, hey, like, what do you? The interviewer's like, hey, what do you do if like there's an attraction between you and the person you're serving it to? And the guy's basically like, well, like you know if it starts to flow, it starts to flow. Like we can, and the guy, the interviewer is like, well, even if they're on the medicine, like they might be like out of their, normal consent, right? And the guy's like, well, it takes two to tango,
Oh my
and this
God.
is literally like on video. So it's people like that who are like willing, to do things like that and kind of brush the ethics of the container out by the wayside. That can open up portals for some of that dark stuff to and manipulation and taking advantage of people to go on.
Yeah. So,
And then
so
obviously that's where the dark beings can, that's where like low astral beings can come in, trauma, and then people who never trust medicines again because they had such a negative experience. But I also think it's really worth getting into this for a second. So, psychosis, mania, derealization, panic attacks, PTSD, and all the very strong abreactions that certain people can have. Um, I think some of that can come from the place people are in. If you're already in a quite unstable place, or if you have a weird container, your intention isn't strong, or you're preparing, but you're not feeling grounded when you're preparing, um, it can open people up to some of those, what I call as false light beings, the beings that are going to be giving you all of the wisdom, all the Luciferic light. Hey, like these are the truths of the universe. But while they do that, they slip in a couple inversions, just enough that skews your energy to split from feeling grounded. And then they keep doing that. And then that can bring people, and we've talked about this in our last podcast, where next thing they know, they're the Messiah. They are Jesus. They are, on these weird sprees, these manic adventures that are spending their life savings. It can be very interesting how it shows up for people. And
what
sometimes
is
psychedelic can be like a door opener to it.
Experience the power of nature with the Organic Muscle pre-workout. 20 organic superfoods, plus mushrooms, fruit, and clean caffeine for smooth energy, powerful strength, increased stamina, and full body nourishment. There's no jitters, no crash, no BS. Just pure organic energy for your healthiest life.
So what do you think is the agenda of the false light beings? They're trying to, they're giving truth mixed with falsity to these people, but why? How does that serve them?
It's a really good question. I try not to engage with them much just because I see where they lead people, But I would say that it seems like they are trying to do as much, I would say almost like psychopathic level harm as possible. They have no conscience in the sense that they will lie to you about the most vulnerable things that you would hope no one would ever lie to you about. Meaning
Mhm.
that, you know, the thing they're like, oh, maybe this will help me find the truth. That you're really pouring your heart out, and a false light being one of these entities, you might call it a luciferic being, fallen angel, lots of different terms, but I specifically call them false light because I feel it's a descriptive term, is that's when they will throw in, the falsehood. So somebody who's like the purest intention, I want to get enlightened, I want to like be a vehicle of love. They'll tell somebody, well, the way you do that is actually by killing yourself. It's like they'll
Mm.
weaponize the most humble and loving intentions to
Yeah.
the most dark place.
Right. And it just clicked for me. This is how they gain trust. Like if a demon comes and it's just I'm evil, da da da, people are like, they'll resist it. They'll see it for what it is. But if a demon comes and speaking truth and saying kind, loving things, then when that lie slips in, it carries a ton of weight. It's like a suitcase nuke that you just smuggled into your city on your own,
Yeah, like Trojan horse
Trojan
situation.
horse. That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of their intentions, I really do think it's just an exaggerated version of the low astral beings. It's an exaggerated version of the demons. It's like if they can get us to, and I might have talked about this with you last time, like homicide or suicide or intense drama. Like literally, like that's kind of where I see their end game usually. Or like going insane. Well, basically having a psychosis that you like just get attached to and you are unable to differentiate yourself from.
Yeah. Well, speaking of psychosis, why don't we just get into the king of psychosis? As far as drugs, the amphetamine category. We could
Yeah,
do
yeah, yeah.
methamphetamines and Adderall, which has been the most destructive, demonic drug in my personal life. But what has your experience been with amphetamines?
I mean, I've never done methamphetamine. I think I took
What a
amphetamine.
loser! I'm just
Oh, sorry, I can't relate with that one. But I will say that I have been around people. I have seen it, and just like you said, it's definitely one of the more apparent in terms of the intensity upon which it can affect people's psyche. And I think one of the reasons that it seems to do this is because the sleep deprivation plus the burning up reserves. So it'll burn your cortisol, burn your adrenals, burn your hormonal reserves, plus sleep deprivation for long periods of time. Then when you're going to sleep, you're not really going to sleep. You're going to like sleep paralysis. You're going into weird nightmares and stuff. People can kind of just accidentally open this darker and darker place where they're obviously, and this is the methamphetamine like stereotype, is then paranoia kicks in. You're looking through the blinds, thinking the police, thinking that the FBI has bugged your apartment, and it starts to feel so real for people. And the bugs under the skin, or just thinking you've been microchipped, and
shadow people.
yeah, all of that can just really start to open up for people on methamphetamine. And then the lack of genuine rest. People are just like resting, resting from like pure exhaustion, but not actually replenishing, and then like continuing to deplete, their temple over time. So yeah, definitely really, really dark. But I imagine that the thing that it gives people on the front end must be crazy, like the carnival ride, right? It must do something there that they're like, this is amazing.
Oh
That then the
yeah,
trade-off comes from.
yeah. The productivity, the confidence you feel godlike in terms of you could accomplish anything. Tasks that you have had on your list for weeks or months or years that you haven't been able to do, you just crush it and have the best time ever doing it. And you just get locked in beyond belief. But the cost is so high. It totally turns off your heart chakra. Your heart is off when you're on Adderall. You don't care about anything except the task at hand. And there's no empathy. And then once you start crashing, it all comes crumbling down. And it actually makes it so the next several days after you do it, you can't really focus without it. And that's how the curse begins. You need it to even do simple things after that. You can't send an email without it. You can't do anything. And then it just has you in its cusp. But something about it, I think it could be the lack of sleep, because you don't truly sleep on it. I think something about the selfishness and the pride that it induces. It really connects people with demonic beings more than anything I've ever seen. And if you read some of the old psychedelic guidebooks, they always say, whatever you do not take psychedelics if you have amphetamine addiction, or if you've used amphetamines anytime recently, because they knew that it opened you up to dark forces. And then if you used a psychedelic while having that dark amphetamine demon on you, that it could have disastrous results.
Yeah, and you're kind of reminding me of something I think is important in this whole conversation is that a lot of these substances, the ones that are more damaging to us, create these like micro tears in our aura.
Mm,
And specifically methamphetamine, but other amphetamines seem to create even more larger tears, bigger openings. And then with the lack of sleep, that the aura gets a little bit weaker. The whole thing is just a recipe for these energies and entities. And then literally, as per usual, people will literally tell you, I see the shadow people. I see the weird witch thing. Like they'll literally tell you in my dream at night, or they'll wake up out of it. Because I
yeah,
believe that people are intuitively, sometimes at the cusp of dreams, able to sense these things.
yeah. Yeah, it just made me think how much amphetamines made me sinful, much like alcohol. And I was comparing it with shroom. What are the substances that have made me not want to be sinful? Mushrooms and bufo. I would say those are really the two that I was like, I want to follow Jesus. Like, I want to be a good human being. I want to love God and love my neighbor. But amphetamines, all I cared about was money, making money, chicks. It makes you super horny, insatiable lust. Um,
I've heard that part. Like just
yeah,
like people will masturbate for like 8 hours or something. Like in some cases, and that could be the case with cocaine, and we can get into that one in a minute too.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And so something like that too. Talk about connecting you to demons, because if you're if you're jerking off for 8 hours straight, you are so depleting your sexual energy. If you're watching porn, that's connecting you with entities. But your auric field is really powered by your sexual energy. That's almost like the fuel source. So if you're super depleting yourself through masturbation or whatever, you're just leaving your field wide open. So amphetamines and cocaine are very damaging when it comes to your sexual energy.
Yeah, and how I think this is common because I know like when I told about my drug addictions before, when I did drugs, cocaine was one of them, and porn was never far away. Like it's weird. Some of these things couple together, like you're saying, vices. Oh, and then cigarettes, and then this, and it
Yeah,
just becomes this like cumulative thing. Um, but yeah, not only are you depleting sexual energy, but you're misimprinting your sacral chakra. You're misimprinting your sexual field with now, rather than actual connection, rather than actual like aliveness and true intimacy, or even just superficial intimacy, it's like the most distant form of intimacy. Somebody you don't know, something you will never meet. Just your sexual energy is getting imprinted with a very dissociated form of sexuality.
yeah. And it's you're imprinting with an industry that's extremely dark and corrupt, and there's human trafficking. There's so much darkness in the porn industry. That's a whole nother episode.
Mm-hmm.
But Yeah, it's so interesting how they all seem to go together. Do you want to talk about cocaine a little bit? Because cocaine was also extremely damaging for me. I think the worst experiences of my entire life have been coming down from cocaine benders back in the day when I hadn't slept in a few days, and I just felt like I was in hell. So, what's your experience with cocaine?
I mean, I literally agree with you exactly. Like those are some of the
I
worst
literally,
experiences
my
I've ever
nervous
had.
system, dude, just like tensed up thinking about it. I'm still traumatized from
I mean,
how
that's how
horrible.
I almost died from it. So we
Oh,
relate on this.
yeah.
And sometimes when I think about it, I get that same type of response you're talking about. But yeah, it's so able to bring people into the paranoia frequency. Now, methamphetamine, I talked about, like you feel like the superhero effect, right? The king of the world effect, and then the sleep deprivation, then the paranoia can kind of come in. But cocaine is, I think maybe because of the short lasting nature of it, seems to be able to bring people to that paranoia frequency so fast. And, you know, and next thing you know, you think you're having a heart attack, you're having a panic attack, or you're getting very anxious. And that 100% happened with me. And for whatever reason, there's a recklessness, same with alcohol, that happened with cocaine for me. And I noticed with a lot of people, it's like, I'm willing to do anything now.
Mm,
I'm sure that's the case with meth and other drugs as well. But in terms of this idea of like, I would then feel comfortable to mix the Coke with something else, like to mix things I wouldn't normally mix. I like those inhibitions, and that can kind of happen with alcohol, like I said,
mm,
go down, and then yeah, a lot of weird, dangerous stuff can happen. So yeah, when I did cocaine, I had definitely a dark cloud around me, probably about four, maybe five different low astral beings, and the more that kind of get involved, the louder the thoughts are. It's like it's harder to think outside of those intrusive thoughts because it's almost like surrounding you. And that's exactly how I felt. Like I would wake up and think about cocaine. I would wake up and think about what can I get. I would wake up and it just starts to consume. Um, and then it can attract more and more darkness. And then you can get into like a feeding frenzy mode where like they just try and get you to go. I'm talking about the entities specifically, further, 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 further until there's some big blow up, some drama, some big moment where it's like you need an intervention at that point usually, and that's when hopefully you have friends, family, or somebody who like will help and sit down with you.
right. Yeah, the crazy thing about cocaine is the complete loss of personal sovereignty. It's was so humiliating to become a total slave. And I would be on the carpet looking for little shards of it, like, and anyone who's done cocaine will tell you, like, when you run out, you'll look everywhere possible to try and get some, and it's totally humiliating. And there's great spiritual consequences to that level of giving up your own sovereignty.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about drugs in general, but specifically with cocaine, it's almost like creating an idol,
Yeah.
because you're using this thing as your highest freedom, highest
Yeah.
pleasure, highest. It can almost start to become your god. Like you wake, like I said, wake up, think about cocaine, go to bed. Think it's like it's becoming your number one, and whatever becomes your number one, in essence, becomes what you worship in a way. It becomes
Hmm.
what you give your attention, your praise, your just focus to. And yeah, it has a way, as well as some of the other very dopaminergic drugs, to create that loop where you are thinking of this thing as your source and your supply of energy.
Hmm.
Very insidious how it can do that.
Yeah, man. And the one of the experiences that actually got me to stop was looking in the mirror one time after a night of doing cocaine, and I looked in my eyes and I saw a demon looking back at me. I don't know how else to describe it, but my eyes were so dark and so lustful and just so, like, I was just horrified by what I saw in the mirror. I said, God, this is not who I want to be. God help me. And there really is something powerful when you admit to God, like, I I've completely lost control and I don't know what to do. I'm in a mess and I don't know how to get out. And then God kind of will throw that life raft down for you, and it might not always make sense, and the timeline might be a little mystifying, but eventually you're going to get back to shore and you're going to figure out the way. But it starts with that act of humility, in my estimation, to getting sober.
Yeah, it's really interesting you brought up the mirror thing because you just reminded me of something that was kind of like the opposite. And I feel like it might be useful to get into this before we maybe go into some of the other heavier, darker stuff.
Okay.
Is one of the moments that I had that was kind of the opposite of what you're talking about, where I looked in the mirror and I saw this is my true self. And I could see the nature of love within myself. Like looking into my eyes, I just see love looking back. And I feel like truly connected. Was one of some of the early times when I took LSD for the first time. This was many, many years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big advocate for synthetics for multiple reasons, but LSD, in my personal experience, in the time many, many years ago, was one of the most actively therapeutic, transformational psychedelic experiences I've ever had. Meaning that the effects and the things I learned and benefited from actually stayed with me for a long period of time after. It changed my behavior. It changed who I was. And in my estimation, in a really good way, it made me a lot more open and loving. But yeah, I remember, I think it was one of the first few times, and I took LSD, I went to the bathroom, and I was looking in the mirror, and I actually felt like I see who I actually am. And I just saw the like love. I just saw soberness, like clarity, like I'm here. I can think, I can feel. Like it was not a fantastical escape. It was like I just feel very, very sober, very, very clear. And that lucidity was very awakening, very powerful for me at that time. But I believe there's a caveat I should say here is that because LSD is a synthetic and it's so active in microdose ranges, it is probably the most counterfeited psychedelic medicine out there, meaning that people will be sold something as LSD, but it's not, or people will be sold something as LSD and it's underdosed or overdosed or impure. There's a lot of issues, and for that reason, it can inadvertently be one of the sketchier medicines that people are able to work with. So I think that that's important to talk about too, just because it's not all just sunshines and rainbows and butterflies with psychedelics. You kind of got to be aware of, and this is why testing is important and everything we talked about, the intention and where you're coming from with it.
Totally. Yeah. And treating it with reverence as well, as you've said before, I think is such a big part of it. And my experiences with LSD really point to that. I've had some of the most beautiful experiences of my life on LSD. I always say when people ask me what LSD was like, I was like, it's like having poor vision and then putting on glasses for the first time in your life. You just see the world so clearly, clearer than you ever thought imaginable. Like you are seeing colors for the first time with such depth and clarity. And felt like I was able to know myself in a way that I had never known myself before, kind of like your mirror experience. It was an extremely positive experience for me. However, after my first two times doing it, which were both magical, I was accidentally dosed it at a party. Someone like had the squirt bottle, squirted it into my mouth, and did it to several other people. And we tripped for 3 days. We didn't sleep for 3 days. We thought we had gone completely insane. And that wasn't good. So don't let people, squirt random things into your mouth at 3 a.m. at a party.
I mean, wow. I mean, this is a perfect example. And this is the case a lot of time when I talk to people about their most traumatic or overwhelming experiences, it does trace back to accidental dosage, accidental overdosing, meaning taking more than you thought, or no time to set an intention, which it sounded like you didn't have the time to, or no time for preparation, like no dieta, no kind of just process. And not saying that accounts for every negative experience, but definitely a good portion seem to have that as a theme.
Yeah. And I was drinking that night. This is back in the day when I would drink. And it's funny, like the most horrifying mushroom trips I ever had in my life, I was drinking. I was such an idiot. I didn't know that this was a thing that you shouldn't drink and do mushrooms. And I think the mushrooms really disciplined me. And they're like, it's like I was a little boy essentially, like, you know, this is a substance, this is a medicine that deserves to be treated with reverence. And when you do that, it can bestow such profound gifts upon you, but you have to be ready to receive those gifts. And I wasn't ready to receive them at the time.
Yeah, I see that definitely in the, like, let's say, juvenile relationship with psychedelics, people drinking, people doing it as a party thing. That can definitely be a huge culprit to a lot of issues. I was very lucky. I kind of intuitively knew early on that if I was to sit with a psychedelic, I wanted to, like, I just intuitively knew to, like, bring a journal, to, like, I would make a playlist. I would, bring everything I needed, like fruit, and go into nature. Like, there was something in me that was, like, guiding this to be like, somehow I end up in the middle of the forest under a tree. And, like, that's where some of these powerful moments of insight happen. Uh, and yeah, I was just kind of led there. But yeah, other people are just being like, hey, let's go to a party, have a few beers. Hey, you want to take this? And then, next thing you know, they're having a meltdown. So yeah, I think I should talk about this though, because psychedelics, like I said, are the double-edged sword. They have this incredible power. I had many, many positive experiences with LSD, and then also there were a few negative ones. But the few negative ones were so powerful that it was like almost like enough to shut down the whole operation, just because that's kind of the nature of some of these negative experiences. And once you start to, and a lot of people share this, like, get too comfortable, then they start to teach you, like, hey, you don't need this. And
Yeah.
like, you're supposed to do some integration, like, you almost get the smack on your hand, or like the burn from the touching the oven. It's
Yeah.
like, this ain't for you right now.
Yeah. And here's the other thing, like, you can have 9 incredible, awe-inspiring psychedelic journeys, and then on the 10th one you die, or you kill yourself, or you break, or you hurt someone else. Like, anything could happen. I have a friend who broke his back on LSD, and he's crippled to this day.
Wow, I've never heard. So how did that happen? If you have the details on that, super curious.
It was at Burning Man. He was dosed up with LSD and essentially lost his mind. Had another voice leading him and telling him things. Man, I've heard so many stories. Another story I just heard about a guy who went into a psychosis on a LSD. But let me finish the story first. It's at Burning Man. He got naked. He's running around naked, and then he climbed. Classic. And then he climbed some huge sculpture thing there that was really tall, and jumped off and broke his spine. And he's been crippled ever since. Yeah. So there's that. I just heard a story about someone who overdosed on LSD and thought that his consciousness had, like, detached from his body. So he was going around and he's like, oh, this is amazing, actually. Like, I'm learning to astrally project so I could go and do whatever I want. So he's like, oh, let me go into this house. And oh, I'm hanging out in this house. And then someone walks in and they're like, what the fuck? Get out of here. And he's like, wow, they could see my consciousness. It wasn't their consciousness. He's just broken
he
into
thought
a
he was
house.
like remote viewing.
He thought he was remote viewing, and he's just chilling in someone's house. So he got arrested. I've got a lot of stories, man. So LSD is one that I have great respect for. And I'm kind of like, even my positive experiences were so powerful that I was kind of terrified still. I'm like, it's such a paradigm shift that I just have great respect for it. And I'm not sure if I'll do it again, because it can be maybe in a very controlled setting with really good, clean stuff.
Well, I mean, I'll say this. I think one of the things I've been realizing over time as a clairvoyant is that plants, plant medicine, fungi, they actually have, like, living spirit from that organic compound in it. There's still, like, a reverberation of the energy of that plant. Whereas the LSD is a little bit different. It's so heavily processed from ergot fungus into then ergotamines, and then to, like, lysergamides or whatever. It turns into then lysergic acid diethylamide. That almost no really longer has its own spirit. So it's just like it's it's just like a pure neutral thing that can go a lot of different ways. It
Right.
doesn't seem to guide people in their experience so much. And so that can be a point potentially in its favor, but in my view, spiritually, it's kind of like to its detriment.
Yeah.
Like the mushroom has its own energy, its own wisdom. You can work with it, its spirit in reverence. And then LSD is almost like a weird sort of anomaly of
Yeah.
consciousness.
Yeah, with mushrooms, it really feels like there's a higher intelligence guiding you. And even if you have profoundly dark experiences on mushrooms, it's still being guided by an intelligence for your greater good. Like my experiences on mushrooms that were demonic were really extremely helpful in my life. I learned they were very humbling, extremely humbling. I was an arrogant little shithead and I needed that. So the mushroom seems to use these experiences to help us grow and to learn to live more harmoniously with other beings and the world at large. Is that your experience? That there's almost like the mushroom spirit?
Yeah, it seems to be like it has its own spirit. I can literally see if I look at a mushroom, if I look at a capsule, and but I see this with everything. Like, it's not a strange thing to me. Like if I look at a food that has a very strong vitality and essence, you know what I mean? Like living foods, or I mean, I've done whole video concepts about this. They can have spirit. Mushroom seems to have a spirit. And that's why I believe it's very important to pray over whatever plant medicines that you consume, to just connect with its spirit, send its good intentions to its spirit, ask that its spirit works with you kindly, and then also connect with God to bless its spirit as well. And everything that really helps to infuse the whole thing with a sacred intention. And then that can be a guide. And to me, it really seems to be a technology of light. Like a lot of people, and this is a whole other rabbit hole, but let's do it. Will have their first light language or speaking in tongues experiences through psychedelic plant medicines.
Hmm.
And the first time that they start to move energy through their system in that way, uh, with a psychedelic, that kind of precipitated that process. I don't know. Have you had any experiences with that, or have you seen? Uh, I don't know that you have necessarily spoken much about speaking in tongues, but I feel like I've heard your co-host Aaron talk about it before.
Aaron's experienced it a lot in church growing up. I'm trying to think. I haven't had a personal experience with the speaking in tongues. I've seen people speak in tongues on mushrooms. Um, it kind of seemed demonic in
It
my
can go either
estimation.
way, yeah.
It was a dark tongues, but I don't have a whole lot of experience with that manifestation.
Well, I'll just talk about it for a second, just because it might be powerful. And I see that there is a really powerful potential benefit to it. There's a bunch of different reasons why. I'm going to explain this in old posts of mine on the nervous system and how spontaneous vocalization bypasses logical filters in the brain. So when you start to just allow energy to move through you, and obviously you want to be in a good energy, not channeling like some dark shit, because yeah, that's another way to do it. But like, let's say that you're channeling in a good way, and I'm not saying you're channeling another being, you're channeling energy through yourself.
Mhm.
What starts to happen is you bypass logical filters in your brain of how your vocal box is normally primed with language. It's like there's filters in the mind that only let you make sounds that make sense. And then once you bypass those by having spontaneous vocalization, it allows energy to move through your nervous system in a way that's completely unprecedented. Like you're not controlling it logically with your mind. And then what can start to happen, and for people who've received activations of light language or who have spoken tongues or really experienced the real deal of it, you can literally first start to feel these electrical, like either chakra openings or meridians activating like through your body. Like you might get tingles down your ears and the back of your neck. You might start to feel like very peaceful and serene expansion in your heart, depending on the way that it's coming forward. And then what happens from that is it can literally alter the way energy is flowing in your body and prime you to receive a different consciousness, to perceive the world differently. And so that way, I do
Um,
think that there's a lot of people who are using light language as an activation or as a way to sort of like integrate or download energy or information. And it's a very powerful, non-linear, non-verbal transmission of energy. And I think the ancients knew this. I don't know how much Yeshua talked about it, but I think he said, those who precede me will cast out demons in my name. Do you know the quote? Do you know the full quote?
No, but there is.
And then
I'm
speaking in
blanking on
tongues, I
that.
believe, was one of those things, if I'm remembering correctly. I could be wrong,
Yeah,
but
yeah, I know they talk about it in Acts quite a bit. There's episodes of people speaking in tongues, and then you have someone translate what they're saying. But it does seem like a kind of almost a cosmic medicine, or it could be. Do you think it's? You said it's not from a being; it's like an energy coming through them. But could that energy be coming? Because I think in the mystical Christian sense, they believe it's an angelic language coming through people.
yeah, okay. I'll get into my full take on it. So I look at it like one, you can, and there's different people describe this in different ways. They'll call it your soul language, which is that's where you're totally channeling your own energy, right? The other one is when you're channeling a celestial or an angelic being. And there's different depths of channeling, meaning that they might just like kind of be whispering it to you and you're just saying it. Or the other version is full channeling where they're like kind of speaking through you. Um, that's kind of the more hardcore version. And then what you alluded to earlier, which is people who are possessed in a demonic sense, and they're almost like using it as a curse. That's possible as well. Like there's a whole spectrum to it. Um, and that's why I think it's so important to understand energy. Is supposed to understand your nervous system, to understand like what feels genuinely of the light, what feels good. And if you don't have that discernment, I don't think you should be dabbling, you know, in these types
Yeah,
of things.
I
But yeah,
just I just found the quote you were referencing, Mark 16:17. And these signs will accompany those who believe. In my name, they will cast out demons and they will speak in new tongues.
there we go. That's what I was alluding to. I'm
Good
glad I
stuff.
remembered it decently.
You
So
did. You did a good job.
this is what I'm talking about. Like, I believe there is something there. And I do believe that the dark often tries to co-opt things that are very powerful of the light, which could lead into a whole other conversation because I wanted to get into nicotine and tobacco,
Yeah.
because I do believe there is a spiritual power behind actual wild, sacred, indigenous tobacco that has been heavily co-opted and perverted with pesticides, chemicals, toxins
Mm.
to basically make them highly carcinogenic, more than they are in their natural state, especially the way the indigenous people use them. Well, similarly, I think when it comes to light language, speaking in tongues, that there's something incredibly powerful there, but there's also been an attempt to hijack it and to see it in a darker light.
Yeah, 100%. So, okay, this is a good segue. I'd love to talk about tobacco.
Okay,
And
in
yeah,
general.
yeah, tobacco, nicotine. Um, you brought up all the pesticides they're grown with, so we could segue into marijuana and cannabis after that, because I know that
Yep.
plays a huge role in the positive or negative of marijuana. But what's a high level overview of tobacco?
So I used to smoke tobacco a long time ago. This went with the cocaine and the alcohol and all of that back then, and that's
Great
usually where it is
combo.
for people. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
usually where it is for people, is like it's in that sort of darker representation of it. It's almost like the difference between I'm thinking of, like ancient Greek art. They would
Hmm.
have like these. It would be like like a naked guy or like a woman, and she has like a satchel, but like one of her breasts is out or something like that. It's
Hmm.
legitimately aesthetic. It's legitimately art. This is kind of how I look at tobacco in its wild form. It is. It has incredible power, but what's happened is that it's been perverted to such an intense level that it's almost unrecognizable to what its actual energy is. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a reason it
Cocaine
was.
too. Coca.
Oh, coca leaf, yeah, it was used in the fields and just, I mean, stepped on, stomped on, run through, filters, chemical hexanes or whatever it is, their solvents they're using on it. Similarly, yeah, away from its natural origin, tobacco in its wild form. There's a reason they used it in the peace pipe, and the ancient indigenous cultures used it as a ceremony to bring tribes together and find peace. literally anything of peace to me is of the light.
Yeah.
And this was the energy and the intention behind it, in a sacred ritual, in a way to connect, in a way for, and especially I think importantly, for the masculine to connect. It has this masculine kind of energy behind it. The men
Hmm.
could like put down their swords and like smoke from the peace pipe or whatever they did. And similarly, and this is probably, I think, where some of the other positive origins can go, is to rapé or hapé, the ancient Amazonian snuff, which bypasses the lungs and just, of course, it affects the nasal passage. That's probably not good to do all the time, but is a much safer way to allow the medicine of nicotine to come into the body. And I really do look at it as that, like it has medicinal properties. Yes, it can be addictive, but I'll tell you this, from when I sat with rapé, which is the indigenous tobacco, versus when I have smoked cigarettes, I found cigarettes to be 5 to 10 times more addictive, way
Oh
harder to
yeah.
stop. Whereas with rapé, I could do it and then not think about it for days or like a week or long periods of time, and just think about it in terms of an intention of a ceremony. With
Hmm.
smoking cigarettes, it wasn't like that. It was like, you're preparing to continue the addiction constantly, and then it would come as a vice if you like, drink or whatever. So that's
Yeah.
really interesting. And I do believe that the entities that I kind of can see involve, with tobacco in the industrial cigarette form, it's often a little bit of a low astral bleed over, meaning that it's just a habit that's harming somebody just enough to go unconscious, and then it's
Mm.
over. It's like a few minutes. And I think that obviously is cumulative over time. But what I've seen with the sacred use of tobacco, and I understand why people reach for it, just because I think unconsciously they're wanting to connect with some of the medicine of the plant that's been so deeply perverted, is it can be a vehicle to connect people with their spirit guides or their angelic guides and support. And I've seen that 100% to be true with tobacco. So this was something I never expected, because when I got clean and sober, I like put everything to the side. I'm like, I'm not going to touch anything, because I thought, anything that alters consciousness is going to do it in a negative way. Like I didn't
Hmm.
even drink coffee. I didn't have cacao. Like I literally stepped back from everything. So to
Wow.
me, this idea of like tobacco potentially having some healing qualities in its wild, natural form was such like off the table.
Hmm.
And what I've seen is that through some of its forms, it can seem to have somewhat of a benefit on the energy system, the vagus nerve, the way that the body responds to it, and then therefore also an ability to connect with spirit guides, messages, downloads, divine intuitions that come through. So really unprecedented, never expected that, but I have seen that over time. But its perverted form does seem to lead people to a darker place. I mean, it literally killed my grandfather with
Mm.
emphysema and lung cancer and throat cancer.
Wow. Yeah, I think the perverted form, like we have this instinct that there's something there. There's something magical that's there, but it's been bastardized. And, I was addicted to nicotine started smoking cigarettes when I was probably 14 years old and had a on and off nicotine addiction until, not that long ago. And I'm totally free of nicotine now. And I almost had to like stop thinking about how beautiful and magnificent of a medicine it is, just to just to focus my mind away from it, because it helps me quit things if I like forget about that stuff.
Yep.
But it's such a slippery slope. Especially, you got me thinking about. It seems like there's this level of nicotine, like because eggplants and tomatoes and stuff have nicotine, but no one's eating eggplants all day, right?
Hmm.
And there's this threshold that gets hit. And I think when they corporatized tobacco, they knew what that threshold is, where people need this all day, every day. And that's what they got in the cigarette. That's what they got in the vape. Forget about it. A vape's like even a 10x of the cigarette. So you could get enslaved to nicotine in one puff. One puff
Hmm.
from a vape is like, a couple cigarettes. So um, But
Yeah,
I
I want
think,
to elucidate on this a little bit because I think it's super important because there definitely is that dark side and that addictive rabbit hole. And yeah, anything that's used as an escape in that way. And this, I think, is really important to help differentiate. So you have natural tobacco, which is wild crafted, like usually from the Amazon. I'm talking about rapé or mapacho, the things they use in
mhm.
ceremony. It's actually a different plant than industrial grade tobacco. They're actually two different plants, and a lot of
Wow, I
people
didn't
don't
realize
know
that.
that. They literally think it's the same thing. I believe the industrial tobacco is called Nicotiana tabacum. So
Hmm.
it's just classic nicotine. It's like this is what 99% of people are taking into their bodies. And that's been bred to have a certain nicotine content. That's been sprayed. That's been, I forget, but there's a specific chemical that's added that makes it even more addictive. I forget what the name of it. It has a short kind of name. And then there is Nicotiana rustica, which is the other plant, completely different plant, and it's a wild form of tobacco and has different alkaloids, different properties. It literally has there's specific things about it that regular industrial tobacco does not have. So I think it's important to
Wow.
differentiate that because when you're thinking about tobacco, and most people, they're thinking about the industrial grade stuff. And what I'm talking about in terms of all the healing is the wild tobacco, which is different plant, which one of its main differences is it has, I believe, a mild effect. It helps, it's like neuroprotective, helps the brain and helps to recycle, the way I understand it, different neurotransmitters get to like kind of move throughout the brain a little bit more for a bit. Um,
Interesting. I didn't know this. I didn't realize it was two different species.
yeah, it could be as far different or maybe even more different than indica and sativa, which is
Wow.
a whole different conversation that kind of lends itself to where we're talking about here because
Hmm.
I believe with the industrial tobacco, they have cultivated it and bred it to become more addictive and to become more
Hmm.
mass scale. And I think that's kind of what's been going on with cannabis too. So you have the pimped out high THC cannabis that is not really how it was divinely found and divinely
Yeah.
created to be in nature.
It's so dang powerful now. And also, all of the indoor grown. Someone who was very wise told me that I started having really bad experiences with marijuana after a period of time. And I was speaking with someone, and they mentioned that marijuana grown without the solar rays, the solar energy, is much more likely to give a bad trip or a negative experience because the solar energy is what balances it all out and gives it that life.
That is probably one of the best points I've heard about that in a long time because that is so unnatural. That is
Mm,
so ridiculously unnatural. Like removing something from the vital provider of sunlight to the planet and just doing it in a basement with
yeah,
people probably swearing and listening to rap and like they're infusing that into the water they're pouring
right.
into it. It's just like it's a whole different energy. Cartels just
Mm,
compared to the natural in nature, probably what was more available 30, 40 years ago or whatever. So yeah, just to get into this, I think I have noticed, I personally had a problem with marijuana many, many years ago, but I've noticed that a lot of people get stuck in and lulled into a lower astral escapist vibration through cannabis. It's very
yeah,
common, but I also know, and there is this ancient lineage in which the yogis used it for meditation, for mantra, for prayers, for hymns, and for stretching and things like this. So it has these different sides to it. I personally found it for me as like a kryptonite for me. Like it was
wow.
too much of an easy escape for my mind. Like the same way you talk about tobacco, that's kind of what marijuana was for me. It's like,
Wow.
and one of the ways I knew it was that is it led to other sins. It led to other imbalances. Like next thing I know, I'd be eating Pop Tarts. Next thing I know, I'd be having popcorn. Next thing I know, I'd be like binge watching something, and then masturbating at the end of the night. And then you know what I mean. It just kind of precipitated itself in that direction. And I think part of that was the relationship I had, and I think a lot of people do have where if they just start smoking every single day, within a couple weeks, it can start to become escapist pretty
Yeah.
quickly, I think, for a lot of people.
I think for most people it's that way. It definitely was for me, but I do know a subset of people, it's maybe 10-15%, who just they smoke and then they just work, like they get after it, they create, they become creative masterminds. A lot of artists and stuff, like it doesn't feed that sloth at all with them. And I find that very interesting. So for all of these substances, some people are wired a bit differently and they could have a more positive experience than others.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was kind of alluding to in the middle of this convo is like they seem to be, every substance has its own energy, its own vibration. It seems to pull people towards a certain direction, but not all people, but it seems to like gravitate people towards a certain direction. I think, yeah, the gluttony thing is huge for marijuana for sure. The sloth, those two together were deadly for me, man. Like I would be like sleeping in, forgetting I had a university project, getting so guilty, feel like literally missing work because I was so tired from like an edible, and like I was just complete confusion and sloth, and then like
Yeah,
eating my feelings away. And then next thing I know, pornography was not far away for me at least, and I
yeah.
think that can be the case for a lot of people as well.
Yeah. For me, it made me a coward. It made me a social coward. It gave me terrible social anxiety. I would not want to be seen by anyone when I was high. I didn't want to, I would shy away from girls I liked. It just made me a coward.
Wow, honestly, looking back, that makes a lot of sense. Like that's a great way to describe it. Like you are just, I think a lot of people just get into a more fearful version of themselves. And you
Yeah.
don't realize it. And then there's the whole other topic of like paranoia and people going down that rabbit hole. I mean,
Hmm.
so many people I've talked to, they're like, "Oh, I smoked weed until I got paranoid. I had to stop." Like that's a very good sign. It's beginning to bring you into a darker, a lower vibration, and then
Hmm.
more interferences from that place can start to happen.
Yeah, totally. Man, all these memories are coming back, bad and good. I will say some of my most special memories in my life were getting high with my friends in high school and just laughing our asses off, just laughing hysterically. I'm pretty sure my first like spiritual experience was listening to Bob Marley while absolutely zooted with my friends. And I started floating above my chair and the music was so beautiful. And I was like, I think like God might be real. This is so beautiful. How could something be so beautiful?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things about any of these drugs is like euphoria can be a portal towards awakening.
Hmm.
And it just helps to show us that something is possible. Because sometimes if an experience is so beautiful, it's like it almost shakes you awake to like there's got to be more. Because if you had a really atheistic view, let's say you were just looking at the world as like just through the lens of science, if you get into some of these spaces of euphoria, you're almost like, this can't just be like brain like stuff,
Hmm.
because this is magical on some level,
It's
and it's that
transcendent.
magic, yeah, transcendent. And then that I think can be a real big opener for people, especially when it comes to psychedelics or semi psychedelics. Like weed, I would say is like kind of like a semi. Um, it doesn't fit the bill of the classical like 5-HT2A receptor serotonergic psychedelics. It's a little different.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's one to be very careful about. I'm personally, especially as I get more into channeling and things like this, it's something that it has the tendency to bring people into illusions, fantasies. I've noticed this, dreams. Like, one day I'll do this. Now, you said you met people who can work, but I've seen the vast majority of people get more into the energy of like kind of hoping, a little bit more
Yeah,
hoping and not acting. And then
definitely.
the perpetual inaction loop, the inaction paralysis analysis, and just time just disappearing. And that's one of the greatest gifts we have in this life is like the time we have, the presence we can share, and how much time people can lose as they don't take action on what their soul and what they're being divinely called to do. It can
Hmm.
be a huge interrupter in that, and actually taking action what your soul's here to do.
Amen. Amen. And it's like the kind of oxymoron of a lot of these substances and drugs is they can kind of show you what you're capable of. With ketamine, for instance, it showed me that I had this incredible destiny to be of service to people, and it showed me a lot of things very clearly. And at the same time, it totally prevented me from achieving that destiny. It's like this great poetic mind f Like it was showing me like you have this great destiny and I'm gonna stop you from getting there. Like
Oh
it's
man.
so it's wild. So I'm glad I had those experiences, but I really needed to stop. I really needed to get sober to actually become the man who was capable of achieving that destiny and achieving that vibration. Just is this making sense?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I'm lucky. I had a positive experience with LSD. I saw how my life was in a loop, how I was repeating patterns with cannabis, I was repeating patterns with smoking cigarettes. And this loop, I saw it playing out, and I saw how painful it was. And then it showed me how I could break the loop. And I saw myself happy. I saw myself free. I saw myself like in a drum circle or something, like doing things I would never have done back then. And then that inspired me to actually change. So kind of the opposite of what you're talking about with ketamine is like it actually spurred me to be like, you know what, I can break this cycle, and I've seen
Yeah.
what is available. But there's these other ones, and I think cannabis can fall into this category for some people, where it just dangles this possibility, but then creates a sloth situation where people just don't believe in it, or they lose their hope and they just don't act.
Mm. That's so interesting. LSD can really be incredible for showing you that vision. We're all grateful that you had that experience and we're able to hop off the self-destructive merry-go-round.
Yeah. So before we hop off today, I don't know if you had that much you wanted to get more into, but I had uh, a memory come into my mind before we came onto this podcast, and I felt God nudging me to share this, and I
Please,
feel like it could be
awesome,
a really good way to kind of close this conversation because I think it hits a lot of the boxes of the overview of the convo.
awesome. Let's do it.
But basically, I was in Kelowna, British Columbia one day, walking around with my friend, and we bumped into this girl. And we were just having a regular day. This must have been about like nine years ago, maybe around then, 8 or 9 years ago. And she was really open with us, like kind of super unfiltered, as if she was drunk, but she wasn't. And she started showing me pictures, and she said like, yeah, I like overdosed earlier this week. And she showed me a photo of her in the hospital with the like breathing mask on, and she was completely unconscious, and she's like, yeah, I almost died. And I was like, basically like, holy shit, wow, like what happened? And she's like, well, fentanyl, like I've been doing fentanyl here and there. And she just started to share her life story, and I was like, holy shit. And she was really young too. She was like 16.
Oh,
16. So
geez.
it was like just like a tragic thing to like see a 16-year-old like almost dying from fentanyl in the photos. But yet she was such a like unfiltered, I think a lot of time people who get into drugs, like they're just like they don't give a shit, so they'll just like say whatever's on their mind. That's like one of the positive sides of the people who are drawn to those spaces. They'd be really raw, really authentic. So, anyways, I felt that from her, and we had the convo, and I just felt, man, I like this is just too strong for me not to like step in further or talk with her more. So I asked her for
Mhm.
her number and that we would stay connected. And like I'm not normally gonna hang out with a 16-year-old, but like I just felt like I don't know, maybe I could help this person in some way, shape,
Yeah,
or form.
yeah.
So I got her number, I messaged her, and she told me she was actually planning on committing suicide that night.
Oh my God.
And me taking her number, messaging her, and being like, "Hey, if you want to like meet up tonight, like later," I felt like the Holy Spirit like just coming alive, be like, "Hey, like talk to this person, like help this person." I'm like,
Yeah,
"Really? That doesn't like I wouldn't normally do this."
yeah.
And so I ended up meeting up with her, and my other friend came along, and we went to her house, and her parents were there, and they were like a little bit weirded out, but they were also like intrigued because I think normally she has like really um, dark tattooed gang
Yeah,
like member people over.
yeah,
So the
yeah,
fact that it was like me and like some other guy who looked like maybe a little different,
yeah.
they were like, "Oh, okay, what's going on?" And so, anyways, I end up talking with her and basically talking through like her suicidal ideation, which she was literally like, "Yeah, I was just going to do as much cocaine as I can and fentanyl and like finish my life tonight. Like that was the plan." And so I end up talking with her, and we're sitting on her bed, me and my friend is like on a chair off to the side. And as I'm talking with her, I get this kind of intuitive Holy Spirit moment wanting to move through me to like grab her hands and to hold her hands. And I start to feel all this light coming through my body. And then she starts like twitching. She starts like full on like convulsing. And all I just kept hearing is this voice wanting to come through me and just say to her, like, you're such a good person. You're such a good person. And I could feel
Wow.
the demons, and I could even see flashes of them, like 6 of these dark beings around her that have been telling her, you're such a bad person. You're such a
Wow.
bad person for so long, that once I started to say this, it was incompatible with their frequency. And
Wow.
so, yeah, I just feel like this vibration moving through me. And it wasn't anything special about me. I feel like it was just, the heavenly realms working through me in that moment. And and she was like, wow, your hands, like I'm feeling like energy coming from your hands. And I'm like, I don't know what's happening, but it's just happening. And I just kept looking in her eyes, and I would see her like basically like twitch, and she'd be like, I think I should do some cocaine. And she would like, oh, she's like, I just
Wow.
want to do some, I just want to do some. And then I would say whatever, what else would come through me, but basically like, you're such a good person. Like, I see that you're a good person. And then everything would like soften and melt. And I'd see that light in her eyes. I'd see the light in her eyes. And we would meet there in a moment. And like her body would start to soften. And then like it would twitch again. And the cycle happened. And we were doing that for like an hour and a half, where I was just talking to her, just in presence, holding her hands. And basically, me and my friend stayed there until she fell asleep, basically to make sure that she didn't kill herself. And she didn't end up doing any more cocaine, which was good. And then we visited her the next morning and brought her a smoothie. She was good. She survived. She told me that her parents said she saw, her parents were heavily Christian, by the way, and they were praying for someone to help. And
Wow.
and so she told me that her parents were like so thankful that I came, and they're like, they said they could feel like an angel. They could feel like, a halo of light around me. And like I
Wow.
said, it wasn't anything about me. It was just like the Holy Spirit was bringing me where I
Hey,
needed to
you
go.
were willing to help. You heeded the call, you
Yeah.
know?
I just listened to it, and it really stood out. It was one of the most powerful moments of my life that I did not expect to end up in a 16-year-old's bedroom. Like, I think I was, 22 or something like that. So, like, it was not something I was anticipating in any way, shape, or form. But anyway, she ended up going to rehab, got clean, and really like followed through the footsteps of her parents, and like taking the Christian path to heart, and like developing a relationship with Jesus and with God, and
Oh, that's amazing.
using that as her anchor to be free. And that's pretty much
Wow.
the last I know. I visited her like one time when she had been clean. We just like listened to some music in her basement. It was fun. But what else do I have in common with a 16-year-old?
Yeah. What an incredible testimony. I mean, that's remarkable. And that's what these voices do. They tell you you're not worthy, that everyone else would be better off with you gone because you're so wicked, or you're a burden on those people you care about, and they lie. The devil comes to lie, kill, and destroy. And that's what they do to our minds. So you were able to relay the opposite message from heaven, that she was what was the message? She was valuable.
You're just such a good person.
She's a
Like,
good
and
person.
I was speaking that from the truth. Like, when I met her, I just thought, oh, this is such a like fun, like innocent, loving person. And then she showed me the photo of her almost dying like 3 days before on like a Wednesday. And I just felt like it was very natural for me to just say this message. Like, I like literally see the light in you. I see the goodness in you. Like, you are a good person. And
Mm,
that became kind of like a mantra, which for whatever reason was able to like defrag her nervous system. And the twitching response, I think, can be quite normal when these things are dislodging. And so, yeah, she went into a lot of in hardcore twitching that was kind of like, reshaping her neural patterns. And these beings were no longer able to be compatible with her field, at least for that night. And then as she continued down that path, she got free.
wow. That's a remarkable story. Thank you so much for sharing. And it's a perfect way to end this podcast. Everyone out there, you never know who you could be an angel for. So listen to that internal guidance system. Remain open, because there is someone out there right now who needs you. They need you and your specific gifts with your specific life story to be the one who helps them find a better path. So, Will, fascinating discussion, bro. I really appreciate you. Any final words before we end this?
I mean, just to piggyback off what you said, like you don't have to be perfect to be an agent of heaven. You just have to be willing, and Holy Spirit will make things move. God will make magic happen, and you don't even have to be like an exorcist. Like all I was saying while holding her eyes and holding her hands and looking to her eyes was just like, you're such a good person. It's sometimes as simple as just sending someone the love that they might not have received.
And it's so beautiful. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Will. Everyone, please check out Will on Instagram. I'll have all the info below in the description. But anyways, God bless you all. Have a wonderful day. Peace. Friends, if you are enjoying this content, I would truly appreciate if you could go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. This will help our little channel grow and flourish so we could spread the good word. Thanks. I appreciate y'all.